academic writing is something mechanic, that you can actually go to the workshop to learn that. So that's why for the past 4 years I never stopped doing that, because I am a foreign learner. English for me is still foreign. I have four languages before English. It's not international language, it's just my local language. I'm from Bugis. I learned Bugis language. Is one ethnicity from thousands of ethnicity in Indonesia. And I learned another language called Makassar ethnic language, and I also learned Indonesian, and I learned the blend of that things, and it's very complicated. Now, the color, the red color, it's getting bigger, critical. Why I put red? Because for me, red is provocating, sexy. So for me, the word critical implies something political. To write critically, what is that? That is my problem now. I think that because of this comment that I show you later, okay? This is my story that I'm going to tell you in 1 to 3 minutes. I try. Okay. What is my writing barriers is, apart from that unable to be critical, is that I tend to see every single paper that I have read as a new idea, as exciting, and I store it. So I become the slave of these new ideas. And it's amazing to found and to go back to my EndNote and then realize I have about 3,000 paper there. So, and then my supervisor said, stop reading. Start writing. Think reflectively. I was analyzing the barriers of the teachers that I work with, about they being unreflective, with myself being unreflective. It's a wonderful experience. So my supervisor said that you have to produce a strong argument, sound idea. What is that actually connected? I heard one man asking about the practice of plagiarisms from Asia. It's very connected to the local context that I'm presenting. Is that the notion of literacy practice. I don't know why I jump into that. Sometimes it's a bit hard to link that, but this is how it works. Okay, I'd like to always compare me with my daughter. Look at the picture. Oh, sorry. This is the picture of the reflections that my daughter have written and produced during her last term in grade 2 here in Australia. Grade 2. It doesn't have to be the language, but the ideas, saying things, express things through pictures, and then saying what you think about what you have learned or about something excites you. It's amazing that the literacy practices in the curriculum of basic education in Australia allows this. I mean, practice this. It's the opposite. It's me. I was born in around 70s. 77, something like that. I don't want to tell you. Yeah, in the 70s. Okay. For me, the word plagiarisms is very irrelevant in my context, in my time. And suddenly, out of the blue, newspaper in the last 10 years claiming the academic in my country, the educators, about being caught of plagiarisms. The academic older than me. Even if at my age, there are few cases, like 20 cases in the newspaper accusing these academics, educators like me, older than me, about plagiarizing the words. Look, I'm not trying to promote plagiarisms. I'm just trying to explain the context of that where I was born, in my time. For me, that's irrelevant because I was educated in the basic education. The literacy that I learned is not like the literacy that my daughter practices here. That's the simple language to put. So this is one of the feedback of my argument from my supervisors. I have two supervisors, very, very, critical. Look, among this, my favorite one is that, the current one is that, what are you doing? Throwing your baby into the water? I don't understand that actually. But what is my supervisors trying to say, that you're not giving, your idea is maybe too weak? I don't know, I'm still working on understanding that. Now, with that, I come with my argument that to bring your awareness, I'm an Asian student. I heard the question from Anita about the local students coming from the migrant family. I think it's very important also to consider the complexity of ethnicity in Australian education context in the university, that to teach academic writing specifically not only to international students but also to the local students who has different background ethnicity. So I'm not saying that I'm an Asian to distance me from international discourse. It's not. It's just like to understand that orality, there is the notion. This is from I forgot the first name, Ong, about the Great Divide, or the practice of orality in Asia. So from orality to literacy, what happened? I focus on the text, people, and engagement. Okay, one very important text in my context, I think also as a Muslim, what we treat the text of Holy Book is something that very holy, high, and respectable. Even we're not allowed to, okay, I'm sorry to be sensitive a bit, that when you are in your period, you're not allowed to touch the text. I don't know whether you there is Muslim here aware of that. You're not allowed to touch the text when you are in period for a female. Now, what is that? To me, at my age, I was trying to ask that to my dad. My dad is an English teacher. My uncle is an English teacher. My auntie is an English teacher. I was actually grow up in the English environment. And my dad is very accommodating person in terms of liberating my ideas, including I refuse to read the Holy Book. I have to admit, Anita is not here. I can't read Al-Quran, the Holy Book, until now, since I refuse to read that, because I say I don't want to read something that I don't understand in Arabic. At that time there is no Indonesian. The Indonesian translation sounds weird for me, so I refuse to read that. Now, this is what I mean, that the traditions, Asian literacy practice has brought us to engage with the text as something sacred, as something valuable in terms of the value, but there is no communication, engagement. What happened is that there is a mediator who understands, who knows that text, and then telling the story to us, and then we are obediently have to listen and agree with that. And that has formed us has created us, has a silence and obedience as a listener. And where is the place of voice in that? It's gone. So this is the word, the book of Great Divide on the year. And then one book that provocatively invited me to gain and seek more about this is that The Training of the Thought, John Dewey. It's amazing that learning English make me for me, learning a language is not only learning the academic, the mechanic skills, writing, vocabulary, no. It's about learning to think. And through John Dewey, I learned that this is the way English think, which is foreign to me, foreign to my practice, and irrelevant. So what happened is that the movement of literacy worldwide programs through UNESCO, through in my culture, in Indonesia, it's called Decentralized Basic Education Program, is amazing and massive, which is, I think, it's good, but maybe relevant to my daughter, not to me. So there is an effort to close the gap or to overcome the deep psychological differences between oral and literate thought. Because orality, to think in oral cultures, this is what the way how we think. And this is what John Dewey proposed about a good way of thinking. For me, I was in between. I am in between. Because when I was using this in my context, and then my mom will say, "You're westernized." Stop doing that. When I was questioned, "Mom, why we are doing that sacrificial stuff, sacrifice, religious stuff that for me is kind of illogical?" And my mom said, "Stop. Well, you are Western now. You're foreign to me. Don't do that." So this is I am and will be when I go back in my country. And this is what I'm trying and struggle now to do and to master. But I think to think is not a skill. It's ideological imposition that for me promoted by the Western society. Western Anglo-Saxon culture. My supervisor kid also reminding me about that. Be careful. So this is the references that if you're interested. But I think one thing that really gave me a lot of reflections is that to be able to share this publicly with friends, workshop. That's why I never stop go to workshop. And I've been with Jen Pinda for like 2 years. Thesis group, and then my friend said, "What are you doing there? You are in your 4th year." I said, "I like it." And also I never stop go to Amoako Europa in Faculty of Educations, skills, improving your skills, academic skills in writing, which is amazing. So thank you very much.
So I'm here to talk to you about learning English as a second language for academic purposes, and I'm going to do that from the standpoint of socio-material studies in education, which is an approach in actor-nectar theory. But first things first, this is the structure of my presentation. Now, writing in English in university is basically knowledge. For the purposes of my presentation, I differentiate between 4 characteristics of knowledge. Knowledge can be common, meaning that it is shared among a certain group of people. It is codified. It can be transmitted via the written medium or other audiovisual material, like this presentation I'm doing now for you. It is tacit, unspoken. A student, international students, will learn English for academic purposes by engaging in the relevant activity in a personal or social way, like with another students rather than academic staff. And finally, it is situated, meaning that it is shared among a group of people within a certain institution, within a certain research community, and it's going to be heterogeneous across institutions that might be located within the same one country or across countries. Also, it will be heterogeneous among one person and another, as we will have different ideas about what it is of style and how we should reference. So, for example, if I'm writing for the educational forum, the journal will ask me to write in a certain type of English and reference in a certain way that might not be the same as the one that I'm required to comply with as part of the graduate program, PhD basically, in political and social science. Now, citation practices are a challenge for everybody, disregarding the culture of the ground, the level of literacy, and students will learn them through progressive testing, like assignments, essay, the feedback they receive, and this is part of the written medium that I talked about, codified knowledge. Also, in the written medium we have university policies, online tutorials, stuff like this. This learning is going to be mediated by the cultural background. The literature will make the example of Chinese students. Confucianism understands regards knowledge as a common and shared heritage that is openly accessible to everybody, so that sometimes plagiarism might be brought about this type of understanding of referencing and knowledge. However, the literature also wants that lecturers in China are very well aware of citation and referencing style in Western countries, although sometimes they might be ambiguous in relation to paraphrasing without acknowledging. And finally, as learning by doing, trial and error. I send my assignment, I receive feedback, and I try to improve on that based on the comments that I receive. So plagiarism is understood as appropriating one's original ideas without acknowledging the person that produced these original ideas. And sometimes, or at least for me as a PhD, I have to be aware that the original ideas might be coming out right now, so that sometimes I research for something that I am thinking and I find that somebody else just said it 2014, and I have to add the reference, and I'm like, but that's okay. So in relation to the assignments and these trial and error, unit coordinators might act as a social interface towards the student in the learning process. Now, these are reasons to bring about plagiarism that I found in the literature. Let's simplify a little to make it more visible. I find it interesting that in terms of university resources, complain that there are not sufficient support structures like cross-cultural learning environments. Students might be unable to deal with the technicalities of the language and juxtapose the words in a way that makes sense. Also in structure, what I found out that was particularly interesting was the lack of professional incentive to bring about plagiarism. It's a burdensome procedure to go through the hearing for misconduct, and lecturers are just not rewarded to do that, and might even found it frustrating because then at the misconduct hearing, international students might just win because of their fee-paying status and because of their visa conditions. Now, two main shortcomings in the literature as I've been viewing it. A lack of empirical appreciation about these overall mediums that are available for students to learn English for academic purposes, and secondarily, the lack of explicitity about the process of learning, the actions and how they relate to these various mediums and to various academic stuff. So I propose to address that via actor network theory, as it has been arising in the 70s to the work of Latour and Cowan. It's about breaking down dualism between man and nature. I will make a working example. This microphone is acting. It is amplifying my voice towards you. But at the same time, it represents a network. Think about the companies that built the components, the company that put the components together, packaged it, shipped it, reached somehow Australia, maybe a local wholesaler, and then the professor in Monash University said, well, we want a microphone with this, and that characteristic, and then Monash University sent somebody to pick this microphone, said, okay, I want this microphone, ship it to us, then we will install it, and now I'm talking through this microphone, and if it breaks down, the network is called into place again, because the IT will come and try to fix it. Now, I'm more interested in what happened in the 1990s in actor network theory and the social material studies in education. Over there I provide a little definition of what is the social material space. The main difference with the original actor network theory is that they view these actor networks as unstable. That is, they can bring about unexpected outcomes that will change the relationship between the various material and non-material actors, and therefore reshape the network, eventually bringing new actors into place. For example, this microphone might dysfunction in such a way that they will choose another function, another microphone, or bring about a different set of items to amplify the voice and make audiovisual presentations. So the essay is my second example, and it is kind of useful for what I'm going to say later. The students write the essay, perhaps as problem in the technicalities of the language, copy-paste from a couple of articles, still write some sort of reference. Teaching associates pick it up and says, I think it is plagiarized. So I will submit it to the, I will highlight it to the unit coordinator. The unit coordinator says, nah, it's fine, end of the story. Or it says, I bring it up to the misconduct committee because this is kind of big. And then at the misconduct committee, where there is, the heads of the faculties rather than the provost chancellor, everybody's there, and they might decide, this is not really intentional and reckless. Let's just issue a warning. And the next time the student come to us, well, perhaps he was already warned and more serious consequences arise. Or they might say it's actually reckless and intentional breach of the misconduct of the university. Therefore, we will either exclude the students from the university, if it is like a PhD student like me, might happen. I don't know, let's hope not. And or we might decide to exclude the student from a particular unit, or to just write it down in its academic curriculum that he plagiarized. So, I find that this framework is useful to address the shortcoming of the literature as I write it down. And actually, I've been recently reading a very interesting article by Intron and Hayes in 2011 that talk about how Greek students go to the United Kingdom and mutually implicate with the plagiarism detecting software over there, which has been designed with UK criteria in mind as a political act. And therefore, because it was designed for UK institutions, given the background, cultural background of Greek students, they would always come at the top as top plagiarists in the university. And some of them actually committed plagiarism, and okay, they were fined for that. Other ones didn't. Other ones were able to manipulate the language and therefore got away with it. So the most important aspect is that we can actually change the way we endorse these issues of learning English for academic purposes and plagiarism, and how we can go about trying to address them and improve the learning trajectory of students. Now, in my little example, just rough, this is what the policy says about plagiarism. And these are examples of what constitutes plagiarism. I didn't know about the images, but I always reference them anyway. And I already mentioned what the unit coordinator might do. And I spoke about basically the left-hand side part of this picture, where the unit coordinator guidelines and head of department misconduct committee and so on come about. Now, as a teaching associate in the past, at the beginning of the semester, I always been spelling out to students what were my criteria for marking, what constituted plagiarism and how serious it was. And I did that because I wanted the assignments for the tutorial to be a sort of training for more important things, like the essay, like the exam, if it is a take-home exam. And sometimes, unfortunately, students just copy-pasted brutally from the internet, or sometimes I would have been smelling the fact that there is some plagiarism because just the English is too good, according to me, for the student like at the first year of the university or second year. And so I would have been, just making a simple Google search and then calling the person up and say, look, I see that maybe you had some problem, or you were under pressure, time, rather than looking good and anything, and you just did that. That's okay. I'm not going to penalize you. Just, you can even quote it all up and reference it like this with the page number or the web page and everything. Or you could decide to, paraphrase and add different references, and this will greatly improve and I will mark you better. But next time that you do this, after I've been addressing you personally, I will refrain from marking this. I will just bring it to the unit coordinator. If he gives you 0, it's 0. If he decides to follow it up or keep an eye open on you for the essay and stuff, it's his fault. Usually this would have been solving, and many people really greatly improved. As an international student myself, I've been engaging with my course material, textbooks, readings, articles in Italy, because I studied my undergrad in English, rather than in Canada, because I studied in Canada at a certain point, and the United States. And then in Australia, I've been looking at online tutorial, referencing, and I've been engaging in the practice. One interesting thing is I would have been using Google search to look for, okay, does this construct that I have in mind, in my Italian mind, make sense in English? Does it exist? What is the alternative construct? Which one gives rise to most research results? What do forums say? Can I look at samples of academic writing in other institutions about this subject? Tricky part. I might have been looking for more colloquial English rather than academic English. They say that we should translate it at the end of the thesis. And still, samples from other institutions are situated knowledge that might not be acceptable within Monash University. What really helped me learn English was assisted university structures. Sometimes they were not very well advertised. During my undergrad in Italy, I had my English advanced. Here at Monash University, there was the Academic Language and Learning Unit. Now it has been reshaped in other courses. Still, I would have been sitting next to them with my assignment, side to side, trying to understand how different is the structure of the talk of this person in front of me from mine, and how I can juxtapose words to learn by doing this knowledge of writing in English for academic purposes in Monash University. And sometimes they would have been telling me, okay, look, you wrote this and you didn't reference it, where does it come from? And I would have been like, it's common knowledge, it's come from the context of the Second World War in this country. Okay, can you actually find a reference about this in a book rather than on a web page? Is all fine. You know, you can reference your assignment from the beginning to the end, and then just say what is your position in relation to the literature, is all fine. That is how it works. And, you know, slowly I've been learning, and then the assignments would have been coming back from the lecturer that was not eventually happy with some stylistic choices. And I've been learning, yes, actually, different people have different ideas about how it should be written, and I would have been adjusting towards the lecturer to keep my marks up. So this network might be reshaped by unexpected outcomes. For example, a misconduct hearing might give rise to, okay, let's issue a warning, or particular information about what brought about plagiarism might be recorded by the people of the misconduct committee, and therefore new information being included in guidelines and regulation, new presentation from librarians, for example, to first-year students, rather than new approaches within the existing university structures. Basically, I think that the approach is okay. We can face issues of learning English for academic purposes and plagiarism through social material studies and education, and there is already an example about it in the literature. What we could do in terms of future research is to engage in quantitative and qualitative data. Quantitative like questionnaires, qualitative like semi-structured interviews, based on a particular group of students, such as Indonesian students in Victoria, and engage with the staff here in Australia, and with the students here in Australia, but also with the context that is there in Indonesia, in order to frame what are the mediums over there to learn English and how it is taught, what is the cultural background, and relate it to what is going on over here and why they're facing difficulties, and improve their learning trajectory.
And I'd like to introduce Clifford Amoako.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hope you can hear from the back. Yes, because we have some time left, I slot in this presentation. Mine is not that very academic. It's everyday experiences I've had in using English as a second language. I'm an African and a Ghanaian, for that matter, and I've been here for the past 2 years, and because of that I have engaged different people and have had experiences as a student, and I want to share them for discussion. On my very first day in Melbourne, I was found somewhere around Southern Cross station, and I wanted to know when the next train is moving. So I went to the front desk and said, please, when is the next train moving? The lady said, huh? And I said, please, when is the next train moving? And then she said, I don't remember what she said, but I heard something like I-30. I-30. That's exactly how I heard it. So I will say that we are responsible for what we say and what we write, but we cannot be responsible for what people hear and understand. So I heard I-30, that's all I heard, and I kept trying to decode the whole morning, and various trains kept leaving me behind. So 2 o'clock, I found my way around to Clayton. So I'm talking about how our pronunciation and our first language or various languages back home have influenced our pronunciation and the kind of difficulties we go through trying to communicate in everyday life on campus and elsewhere. Not too long ago, I was stopped by somebody who wanted to find the washrooms around, because now I'm a senior now, I've been here for 2 years. So, and in fact, she also said things I couldn't hear, and I also found myself saying, huh? And that is how it goes on. So these are some of the experiences. I was a tutor for a course last semester, and I remember a student asking me that, please, I'm going to ask you this question, don't be offended. Then I said, well, I wouldn't be offended. Why should I be? I will not be offended. Then she said, why do you appear to be shouting when you are talking? Then I said, well, I am not sure I shout, but what happens is that in my mother tongue or my local language, we speak from the vocal cord, so it comes with a bit of force. But you appear to speak through your nasal cord. So it's likely I will be shouting because it's coming directly from the vocal cord. So these are some of the challenges I think we have all had as international students with our pronunciation, which has been influenced so much by our local languages. Then the contextual use of words and what they mean. I remember in a presentation, I was given an acknowledgement, thanking my supervisors, and I said that I thank Dr. So for all her efforts. She helped me sometimes unconsciously. I use the word unconsciously. And I think the meaning was different. I was just trying to say that she has helped me without really helping me or thinking about it. But I think it meant something different, that she was in coma or something like that. So clearly, our use of words, the context that we want to use them, and how they have been explained or how they mean, what they mean for the people who are listening or reading, it's always shrouded in all kinds of difficulties. So we have had to, I have had my supervisors changing due to owing to in my work, due to owing to. I have had difficulties trying to understand what exactly the differences are, and so on. But these are all about the context and the meanings. So we have had challenges like that, and as we are all trying to think through, maybe during the time we are doing the panel discussion, these things will come up as context in the use of the words that we have been presenting. Engaging through written communication has also been an area where I've had a number of experiences. Just like Andi presented, my supervisor has told me, well, Clifford, your presentation is beautiful, but it's too descriptive. You must be a bit analytical. where am I? What is the difference between descriptive, analytical? What does it mean to be descriptive? What does it mean to be analytical? We have had these challenges as well in terms of engagement through written communication. And sometimes I have always asked myself the question of, if we are looking at what is original, like Andrew said, then the question should be what is not original, and how do we decipher, or how do we differentiate between the two in terms of what they mean and how they should be presented. Then content analysis of what is written, and as I said earlier, I am always responsible for what I have written, but I cannot be sure, and I cannot be responsible for what you read and how you understand it. So we have always had such difficulties as to, this is what I wanted to write. Then somebody reading will say, well, this is not what I am getting from you. So then we are responsible for what we have. I am responsible for what I have written. You are responsible for what you read. But by the end of the day, I must submit something for a degree. So it means that we have to always have a kind of discussion around that. So these are some of the experiences, not only myself, but some of my colleagues we have all had in our discussions or in our engagements with the use of English as a second language. Yes, so through that, these are the things I have learned. The first one is that I have decided not to be afraid to speak or to write. And I have learned this one since I came. No worries. There's nothing to be afraid of. Just to communicate or try to say it the best way I can and be responsible for that, and then allow you to be responsible for what you hear. And then when you engage me, I'll try to explain what I mean or what I wanted to write for the necessary corrections and shaping. The second thing is that I say it as naturally as I can. Because there's always the tendency that you are influenced by the pronunciation of certain words as you continue to engage. But I try not to be influenced so much by what I hear and all that. So I say it, write it the way I will say it. And then I think clearly, and the problem with some of us, the international students, is that we think in our mother tongue, we think in our local language before we try to translate it into English. And we don't have the same number of alphabets in our local language as we do in English. So all the time there's that kind of difficulty trying to say all that you have taught in English. So these are some of the challenges that our experiences I've had, and the challenges and what I have learned from them. Thank you very much for listening.
Here, the panelists, you can't see them. Alberto, Andi and Clifford. We're just going to start with questions from the room. So are there any questions that you would like to ask the panelists or Joyce? Joyce is a PhD student, Matthew?
I just finished Masters in the Faculty of Education.
Masters.
A very interesting thesis about the hegemonic influence of English as an academic and international language.
Are there any questions for the speakers that just preceded this session?
I'll give you a question from right up the back here. Actually, perhaps I can probably talk loudly enough without this.
Okay.
In the morning sessions, there was an interesting sort of debate or balance between what the university was about. Was it about challenging existing ways of doing things, or helping students to, I guess, to join the club, if you like? what do the postgraduate students think of that debate? Are you here to learn about how to operate in this academic world, or are you here to try and change the world?
Bit of both. We're going to be lucky if we manage to add a little bit of knowledge that we still create a very small revolution, but we are here mostly to learn how to engage with a particular community and to speak towards the world. My supervisor once told me something very interesting. She says, intelligence is not about the things that you can write or you complicate and so on and so forth, but how clearly you can communicate what is up in your mind. And that brings about communication not only towards the academic community, but also towards everybody that is around. And I view these new social medias, revolution, and the fact how lecturers start engaging with them as very positive in this sense.
Thank you very much. I think I associate myself with all that he has said, but I'll add a little. For me, as an African student, I think we are not really going to change the world, but to learn more from the kind of engagement I have from here. And then we'll be a little more ready and prepared to contribute more to my continent and my country. That's one side of it. The second is that it is a whole new process for me of learning the structures involved in thinking, in identifying problems, and finding the appropriate solutions for them. That's how I see it. Thank you.
This is always the questions in education faculty also raised to the teachers or educators coming to this university, is that, are you doing something practical, or are you doing something philosophical that is contributes to you personally or contributes to your nations? I'm under government scholarship and I come with very practical reasons that, to me, or the teachers, I am a teacher educator in my country. I have my own foundation, educational foundation for teachers development that I established after I finished my master's here in Australia in 2003. And then I come back here because I find Monash is very fascinating for that. So, with the people also. So it's very practical that sometimes my supervisor said that, I know that you're that someday, I know that you can be a prime minister. No, I said no, I just want something that really raised my curiosity, is that because this is a big, I was a trainer for decentralized basic education. This is a USAID, United States project, developing literacy for teachers, for children around the world, developing country, that's what they said, including Indonesia. So I was in 7 provinces, I was in